Good afternoon. Welcome to everybody. On behalf of the village, the Glenview Village Board of Trustees, and the community, I would like to welcome you to Glenview, and specifically to the Glen, to recognize the achievements of many organizations that work together to transform the former Glenview Naval Air Station into the beautiful homes, vibrant businesses, and unique amenities that surround us today. 75 years ago, at the height of World War II, at this spot, we probably would have been watching cadets scrambling down the runways to torpedo bombers or crewmen known as yellow shirts waving their hands to communicate with pilots through hand signals. 50 years ago, we would have seen the U.S. Coast Guard helicopters flying by, or the Air Baron's precision demonstration team take off to entertain crowds gathered outside for the annual Air Exposition. On September 9th, 1995, the last ceremony was held here at the Naval Air Station Glenview as it was decommissioned. The end of the naval base was a new beginning for Glenview. Developed as a village within a village, the Glen has seamlessly become one of the many neighborhoods in our community. Where once was miles of runway and obsolete Navy buildings, today are a new Metra commuter station. More than 2,200 residential units, 2 million square feet of office and retail, more than 400 acres of green space, and 165,000 square foot park center. And a new post office, a new fire station, a new police station and village hall, a new middle school, and a public safety training academy. The Glen's success story has become a model for how to redevelop old military bases through consensus building and partnerships. I'm proud to say that this process of community planning and implementation has been recognized by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and we are here today to receive and celebrate this honor. This award recognizes the hard work and innovative thinking and cooperation of so many. Today, we'll hear about federal and state agencies, partners both public and private, village staff, and community members who facilitated the restoration of this former federal site for a beneficial reuse. That includes the BRAC cleanup team and the village's Restoration Advisory Board, or RAB. If you look at the Navy Boulevard signs, you'll notice that the street also bears the name of our former village board president, Nancy Furfer. The transformation of the former Glenview Naval Air Station into the Glen is part of Nancy Furfer's legacy. As part of the Glen Town Center's 10th anniversary in 2013, the village acknowledged Nancy's service by unveiling those honorary Nancy Furfer Way signs. Unfortunately, Nancy could not be here today as she's traveling to New York, but she requested that I read a letter from her to acknowledge all of the efforts that made this redevelopment such a success. Quoting from Nancy's letter, "I wish that I could be with you today and be part of this celebration. As many of you know, just 2 weeks after I filed nominating forms in 1993 to run as village president, the decision was announced that the Naval Air Station Glenview was on the preliminary list of military bases being considered for closure. And the day after I was sworn in as village president, I was testifying in front of the Base Realignment and Closure Commission. Those years in office turned out to be some of the busiest in my life. but also the most rewarding, because this 1,121 acre former Naval Air Station has greatly enhanced our community. This redevelopment could not have happened without a great team and great teamwork. It started and ended with state and federal cooperation, public and private innovation, leadership by a great Village Board of Trustees, and the hard work of village staff. I am especially thankful that we had an incredibly talented village manager in Paul McCarthy. It turned out to have been lucky that in 1971, the Navy allowed Glenview to annex the base property so that some subdivisions to the west could become part of the village. Glenview, therefore, could accept the designation of local development authority and assume the role as master developer. That meant that the village could be the driver in an effort to create one reuse plan the whole community would support. And it ensured that all decisions related to redeveloping the 1.5 square miles of base property would be controlled at the local level, protecting the interests of residents and core jurisdictions. Transparency and community involvement were key. We created a community reuse planning group with representatives from all facets of Glenview. In fact, we even had a planning presentation from Glenview Middle School students. Because the planning was done so quickly, we were able to expedite federal environmental cleanup funds to our property, which in turn enabled the BRAC cleanup team and the Restoration Advisory Board to get their work done several years ahead of schedule. The base closed in 1995, and our first clean parcel, consisting of about half the property, was transferred to us in 1997. We finished our detailed master plan that year and started marketing the property in 1998, with numerous land sale agreements completed in 1999. This set the stage for most of the Glen to be built in the early to mid 2000s. Because the property was cleaned quickly and to residential standards, the village was able to accomplish the redevelopment process much faster than most other base closure developments. To this day, I'm still enormously proud of what we accomplished and humbled that this enormous undertaking is still being recognized. Thank you to each and every agency and individual who helped pull an oar to get this project completed in such a professional manner with outstanding results. The U.S. Environmental Agency's Federal Facilities Restoration and Reuse Office works with the U.S. Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, and other federal entities to develop creative, cost-effective solutions to environmental challenges at their facilities. The office's mission is to facilitate fast, effective, and less costly cleanup and reuse of contaminated areas at federal facilities. For our first speaker, I'd like to call up the office's Acting Director, Gregory Gervais. Greg? It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here as the first annual National Federal Facility Excellent in Site Reuse Award is presented to the Naval Air Station Glenview Reuse Team in recognition of their successful work at this non-NPL BRAC, or Non-National Priorities List, Base Realignment and Closure site. My office, the Federal Facilities Restoration and Reuse Office at U.S. EPA headquarters, established this award last year to celebrate the cleanup and reuse achievements that have been made at federal facilities across the country that frequently go unnoticed. Let me start by saying good work to all of you who played a role in making this reuse happen. And as you'll find out when we get to the end of the program today, it was really a village of people, really a long list of people that made this happen. I know it's not always easy, but this award recognizes the hard work, innovative thinking, and cooperation among federal agencies, states, tribes, local partners, and developers to encourage restoration of federal facility sites around the country for beneficial reuses. Cleaning up contaminated sites at federal facilities can serve as a catalyst for economic growth and community revitalization. In 2018, we received 22 nominations around the country demonstrating innovative federal facility cleanups at Army, Navy, Air Force, Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Energy, Department of the Interior, and NASA sites. A team of external reviewers from states and federal agencies provided input to the EPA review panel that evaluated these nominations. We were pleased, and in fact, we were blown away with the overwhelming response and the quality of the submissions, and it was difficult for the panel to select the winners in the 4 categories: NPL, National Priorities List, non-NPL cleanups, NPL BRAC, and non-NPL BRAC sites. However, it was easy to see why the former Naval Air Station Glenview rose to the top. This accomplishment was largely due to early engagement and teamwork that led to good site assessment and the appropriate environmental cleanup that achieved cleanup goals to support the reuse that this community established. The diverse team of over 40 stakeholders and partners were part of the reuse team here at the former Glenview Naval Air Station. Good environmental assessment and cleanup that matches the intended reuse form the foundation for successful development. The transformation of the site into multiple beneficial use areas, as we can all clearly see from the Glen community, has brought jobs and additional economic growth to the region. The site remedy consisted of cleaning the property to residential use, and as we just heard from the president of the village, provided flexibility needed to implement the community's reuse plan for this mixed-use development. The projects are just incredible, and I won't even repeat all the numbers, but they're staggering. The number of residential units, the office space and retail, the green space as part of this community, the community center, the post office, and on and on and on. This is definitely a success story that's led to economic growth and community revitalization. I would like to congratulate the Glenview Reuse team for forming an innovative partnership. This approach worked, and it's a model that is sure to benefit other reuse projects in the future around the country and beyond. Thank you.
Nicely done. Thank you, Gregory. And next, we have Kathy Stepp, who serves as the Regional Administrator for the EPA Region 5. Her responsibilities include overseeing environmental protection efforts in the Great Lakes states of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin, as well as 35 federally recognized tribal governments. Kathy?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As a representative of the federal government, I'm sure you're expecting me to give very focused, technical government type talking points. So I'm going to, I have those, but I'm going to stray just a little bit and share with you my first impressions. This is my first time to Glenview. I'm really a Wisconsin native, but I do pass Glenview on my Metra ride into downtown Chicago. And I will say, man, have I been missing it. When I first pulled into this area and my car's parked over there, I will tell you, you can feel the joy and the feeling of community and commitment that is happening right here. And it is such a very special moment for me to be able to join you in the celebration of this really incredible honor to come to this community. You are the poster child example of all things that we can do when everyone's leaning in towards that same effort together, and how not one of those individual groups who were involved in this all the way along through the many years could have ever done that alone. And that really speaks to that sense of family and community and commitment and frankly shared history, because it's always hard when bases close. There is such a sense of loss many times in communities. Elected officials really struggle with those decisions and explaining those to constituents as well. But what a better way to put an exclamation point at the end of a really truly historical place than the way it happened here. There is no better way. And I just want to congratulate all of you and to tell you, not only is every day outside of downtown Chicago a very good day for me, but this is even more special because of, again, that feeling of commitment and community that is so on display with everybody here today. So you heard a lot about the statistics, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of the different things that you see around you and that the community gets to enjoy every day. But I just want to talk about what we do in our role as at EPA, which is many times people don't equate EPA with economic development, right? You just don't think that those things generally go together. Which we're working really hard to change that perception, because we are many times kind of maybe the seed planters in a garden of revitalization of communities. And then it's up to community members, other levels of government, just, different interest groups that pay attention to these issues to kind of fertilize that soil and to water it with care, and then to be able to reap the benefits, the bouquet at the end of that effort is really an exceptional thing to behold. But we're really an important part of that in many of the sites when it comes to redevelopment and fixing environmental contamination, being the guide and the technical partner with our partners at Illinois EPA, who have been exceptional throughout all of this effort as well. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the community leaders and the everyday citizens who care so much and love their community, that put that hard work in day to day, that go to those hearings in Washington, which can be very intimidating. And so it's all the appreciation that I feel is having what I say many times, the honor to get to be the glitter and rainbows, or the packaging, right? The bow on the package of the very good works that our team does at EPA. But I will be bragging about Glenview in all of my travels throughout the other states in Region 5, because indeed, you have done something really, really special here. So my congratulations to all of you, and thank you for the honor to get to join all of you in celebrating it today.
Thank you, Kathy. I can recall during President Nancy Furfer, when she was here dealing with some of these things, there were a couple of groups of citizens that actually said, we can band together and stop this. And there was, that feeling that they really were kind of feeling run over, if you will. And they did have a tremendous bind to what was here. And I can remember a couple of different occasions where there were challenges that was kind of like, we need to figure out how to get this done. So you relate really well to all of this. I compliment you. And next we have Mr. John Kim, who was appointed as Director of the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency on January 22nd, 2019. He has served in many senior roles during his 25 years at the agency under 5 governors of both parties. John? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The trick to serving under 5 governors is not to do a lot of public speaking, and so this may be it. On behalf of the Illinois EPA, thank you very much for inviting us here, Village President Patterson. Thank you for this opportunity to come out and really celebrate the significance of what's happened here in Glenview. And also, thank you for the beautiful day. We would also, on behalf of the agency, like to extend special thanks to Kathy Stepp, the regional administrator, and Greg Gervais, our federal partners in this project. Our agency works very closely, hand in hand, with US EPA on many projects, and this is a good example of how that federal partnership can really produce some fantastic results. It's a privilege to join all of you here today to talk about and to recognize the transformation of Naval Air Station Glenview to the Glen. I do recall when I was young, I live in central Illinois, but I have relatives that live up here in this area. And so I'm plenty old enough to remember coming up and visiting and being very excited. And I don't remember the road, but when we would go by, there was one of the runways, and we would always stop and try and see if there was a plane landing or taking off, and it was always just such a big thrill for us. And so now to come back and be here and see this is just really mind-blowing. It's just amazing what's happened here. Again, on behalf of the agency, we were and are a very proud partner in everything that took place here, and certainly we were very happy to be a part of the effort to nominate Naval Air Station Glenview for the National Federal Facility Excellence in Site Reuse Award. Illinois was fortunate enough, of the 4 awards, I think out of the initial batch that were given, to receive 2 awards here in our state, and very excited to be here today to talk about Glenview. As you all probably know much better than me, Naval Air Station Glenview is a big part of Illinois' proud military history. Following the closure of the air station, the Illinois EPA partnered with the U.S. Navy, with the Village of Glenview, and U.S. EPA to help expedite the redevelopment of the site. Our agency was part of that initial Base Realignment and Closure cleanup team, and we began that planning and oversight work. And I think one of the keys to the success was an intentional drive to try and get this expedited as quickly as possible, to identify priority areas that would be done, and also the foresight on the part of the village to work very closely with the team to point out which parts should come first, and it helped to sort of phase and stagger the approach, and it really led to a much more effective long-term plan. From our agency's perspective, a big reason we think that there was so much positive results here was our good idea to assign our project manager, Charlene Falco, to oversee the site. Charlene began work on the site in 1994. She worked throughout. I've had the good fortune to work with Charlene on a number of different projects. She is a fantastic overseer of complex, complicated projects. She's a really good team builder. She's here today, and we could not be more happy that she played such an important role in making sure all this got done. So, Charlene, thank you very much. To get a little technical, one of the important things from our agency's perspective is that one of the reasons also that the cleanup and the investigation here happened so quickly and so well was the cleanup used risk-based soil screening values, and that's something that was at the time fairly new for us here in Illinois. And basically what that does is, instead of sort of taking a one-size-fits-all approach, you take a look at the specifics of what you're presented with, what the ultimate goals are, and you tailor the approach that way. And the results here were a big part in Illinois developing what are called our tiered approach to corrective action objectives, or our TACO objectives, and that's something that we have in place to this day. It allows us to tailor the level of cleanup to the nature and the type of expected use, and again, you could not come up with a better example of how well that kind of approach can work other than looking here at the Glens. Also significant in terms of the BRAC cleanup team and what they were doing was the fact that they were able to achieve this level of cleanup that allowed the transfer of property without any institutional controls, without any additional need that would otherwise sort of limit or hamper the development of the property. So that flexibility that was given to the community once that property was turned over, again, allowed for this expedited redevelopment and allowed for the different multi-use structures and improvements that you see here today. Also important, I think, certainly from the community's perspective, we're retaining certain elements from the Naval Air Station so that you can still see them today. And obviously, right behind me, you have the control tower, you have Hangar 1 that was kept, you have these very important and moving statues. It's a part of Glenview's character and their history, and It's obviously a beautiful development, and it stands on its own. But to have those elements still here in place so that people can see them and know what the historic significance of the location is, I think is a really special part of the development. And from our perspective, in addition to, as has been noted, the many different types of structures and uses that have been put into place, 32 acres of prairie land were preserved, and there was a 45-acre lake constructed to help centralize stormwater detention. So those are important environmental elements that were woven in and specifically put into place with the development, which again reflects a nice balance and a good overall picture on behalf of the community. So in the end, all the stakeholders and all the parties' work involved in this extensive cleanup led to the remarkable transformation to the Glen. On behalf of the Illinois EPA, we thank US EPA and the Federal Facilities Restoration and Reuse Office for recognizing the efforts of all the parties towards this very successful and meaningful redevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I don't know that I knew some of those details about specific, but it makes so much more sense economically to be targeted where you clean up, so that's good to hear. I think Don Owen lived through all this, and he would have known all those things. Our elected federal officials were often the crucial bridge between the village of Glenview and the federal agencies responsible for closing the Glenview Naval Air Station, and those redirecting the reuse and redevelopment. U.S. Senator Dick Durbin was instrumental in expediting federal cleanup funding for the base and helped Glenview coordinate all federal activities. Speaking on Senator Durbin's behalf is his office manager, Celeste Gabinski. Celeste? Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, it's nice to be here, and I echo Administrator Stepp's often thoughts about being out of the office, because I'm in the loop too, so it's wonderful to be out here today. And as the daughter of a World War II Navy veteran, it's even a little bit more close to my heart. I'd like to thank everyone for coming and to celebrate this amazing accomplishment. Administrator Stepp, Director Kim, Village President Patterson, representatives from Congressman Schneider and Congresswoman Tchaikovsky's office. And I'd like to thank the Glenview Advisory Board and everyone who worked to make this aspirational vision a reality. It's no wonder the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency chose Glenview to receive its first National Federal Facility Excellence and Site Reuse Award. Very difficult to come out of the mouth. It doesn't kind of flow, you know. It's kind of like... This accomplishment would not have been possible without the longstanding partnerships between federal, state, and local governments and the dedication of the community members who have worked for more than 20 years to get this former Naval Air Station a clean bill of health. The U.S. Navy, the U.S. EPA, Illinois EPA, and the Village of Glenview all played critical roles in helping complete this $25 million cleanup effort that helped transform this area from abandoned runways to this lively, vibrant downtown it is today. While most Superfund sites, especially those not on the national priorities list, languish untouched for years due to the lack of funding, this powerful collaboration was able to redevelop more than 1,000 acres for land that is now used for homes, businesses, and schools. And that deserves a round of applause. We're encouraged by the success that has been demonstrated here and hope that we can find ways to duplicate it nationally. Thank you for inviting our office and Senator Durbin's staff to help recognize this impressive renovation. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us this afternoon. Glenview is fortunate to have two representatives to the U.S. House. The 10th Congressional District is represented by Brad Schneider. Speaking on his behalf is his District Director, Megan Ryan. Megan? Good afternoon. Thank you.
Congressman Schneider is sorry he couldn't be here today and asked me to read everybody a letter from him. Dear friends, I am honored to congratulate everyone for receiving the National Federal Facility Excellence and Site Reuse Award from the Environmental Protection Agency recognizing the Glen development. I wish I could be there today to personally congratulate you on this momentous achievement. The hard work done by village officials, the community, and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, with help from federal EPA officials to redevelop Naval Air Station Glenview into a vibrant multi-use district, allows Glenview residents to utilize one of the community's greatest assets. The innovative thinking and cooperative spirit demonstrated by everyone involved in this project serves as an inspiration to us all. Formerly part of Naval Air Station Glenview, the land where the Glen now stands was once used to train thousands of pilots who went on to bravely serve our country, including Presidents Gerald Ford and George H.W. Bush. The control tower and hangar still stand as a constant reminder of this extraordinary history. Since the closure of the base, the village of Glenview has developed the land into its incredible town center, which continues to serve not only residents of Glenview, but millions of people from around our area. I send my best wishes as you celebrate receiving this award. Please know my team and I are here to help anytime. Sincerely, Congressman Brad Schneider. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And one of Glenview's strongest advocates during the cleanup and redevelopment of the former Glenview Naval Air Station was 9th District Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, in whose U.S. House district the Glen is located. And in fact, Jan wrote a letter in support of the Base Transformation's nomination for this award to the U.S. EPA. Jan could not be here today, but is represented by her suburban director. I'll wait so he goes by to say, Ann Limjoko, thank you for coming here. Welcome.
I am so excited to be here today. My name is Ann Limjoko, and I'm Suburban Director for Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, and also a very proud Glenview native. Whenever I see President Patterson at many events, I always remind him that I'm from Glenview. And I'm just so proud to have gone to high school here. I'm proud to see this. This was all redeveloped when I was in college, but I very much remember it. So the Congresswoman apologizes that she was not able to make it today. She's actually out of the country. So she would have loved to have been here today. She wanted to send her sincere congratulations to the Village of Glenview, to the Illinois EPA, the U.S. EPA, also the Glenview Advisory Board, and I think it's called the Glenview Restoration Advisory Board, and also the U.S. Navy that all took, they were all very vital in making this happen, and today is such a great day. As President Patterson said, in February of last year, the Congresswoman sent a letter. So she formally supported the Glen's nomination for this EPA Excellence in Site Reuse Award, which is the first annual. And I just want to read a portion of the wording that's in this letter. And yeah, so it will just show the excitement that she had and that I had to nominate this wonderful place. So with its open space, residential and commercial areas, the Glen has enhanced the quality of life for people living and working in the area. I believe that the Naval Air Station Glenview's transformation to the Glen deserves recognition for its successful integration into Glenview's municipal space. Thousands of my constituents enjoy this wonderful space year-round. So, as President Patterson said, there are two representatives that represent Village of Glenview. So Congressman Schneider represents West Glenview, and then we represent East Glenview. So as I'm standing here, I could see Lake Glenview, and yes, and Gallery Park. So as the Congresswoman said, thousands of constituents enjoy this wonderful space year-round. I just had to make a plug that one of the most, I would say, notable events in the Village of Glenview is the Sprint Triathlon. Does everybody know about the Sprint Triathlon? It's been happening in the Village of Glenview on this property for 17 years and running, and I participated twice in that event, and I had to plug that. And I wanted to say, I'm not plugging myself, I'm plugging that the Glen is one of the most beautiful places to bike and run in the state of Illinois. I really believe that. So I'm glad to be here, and I apologize the Congresswoman could be here. But today's a wonderful day, and I'm so happy that the sun is out and we can continue celebrating. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ann. Mike, that is a Park District event, isn't it? So the Park Center was actually built on this same site as well. So yes, it's an appropriate recognition, so thank you. James Anderson, or Jimmy Anderson, was formerly director of the Base Realignment and Closure Program Management Office, Southeast. Jimmy was instrumental in assisting the village in receiving a no-cost economic development conveyance for the base. His real estate expertise, along with other members of the Southern Division Naval Facilities Engineering Command, or SouthDiv, was invaluable. Jimmy? I'm not sure how many people really understand the significance of the economic development conveyance. So, thank you.
I'll try to explain that. The southeast portion is, I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, and when I left Charleston yesterday, it was 104 degrees. So thank you for this cool reception. It's good. I know you all feel hot, but it's not hot. I'd like to give you a little bit of a history lesson, if I will. You've heard bits and pieces from different speakers, but see if I can't kind of tie this up a little bit. In 1990, Congress passed the Base Closure and Realignment Act, and now we know that as BRAC and all the BRAC actions that followed, but it was in response to a crisis in the military. In the case of the Navy, I'll give you an example. We had enough bases, piers, runways to support a 1,000-ship Navy. The last time the United States had a 1,000-ship Navy was in the closing days of World War II, and we knew we would never have that again. As a comparison, today we have somewhere around 285 ships. So there's a huge disparity in that. The buildings, the infrastructures, and all of these bases, even on the most active bases, were old, they were expensive to maintain, and the taxpayers' costs were only going up. Something had to be done. So through the BRAC process, bases were selected, and they were to be disposed of and taken off of the inventory, which leads us kind of to where we are today, to this award. When our team first came to Glenview, it was 1993. And I realized, hearing these notes, 26 years ago, so time has flown. But we came here actually, I think there was a comment you made about Nancy Furfer's speaking for the BRAC Commission. When the preliminary list came out, we made a visit to all the bases in our area to meet with the base commanding officer and with the community involved to kind of tell them what was happening. Our mission at that time was to, one, close the base as soon as we possibly could, to clean the base up as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly could, and dispose of the property as fast as we could. And there's a theme there. Right? The Navy is no longer needing the property, and we wanted to get out and leave town. As cold and as cruel as that sounds, that was kind of the business side of its mission. And let me provide a little bit of background to that. The reason we did that, for 75 years, when the federal government no longer needed the piece of property, they turned to the General Services Administration. They handed the property off, literally handed the deed off to the General Services Administration, and GSA put it up for sale. And they literally, in many cases, set a tent up and had a public auction and sold the land. And then they walked away. From day one, though, in this BRAC process, realized that was just not going to work. The vast amount of property, the complexity of the properties that we were getting rid of, the old GSA route was not going to work. And in fact, GSA, when the base closure law was passed, GSA turned to the Navy and to the other services, the Army and Air Force as well, and said, we don't want to touch that. We're going to hand you the authority to transfer the land yourself, and we'll step back and call us if you need us, you want to hire us to do something, but you got it, okay? And so there was a very complex issue here that we really didn't know how to solve. And we had to sit down, in the case of Glenview, with the village, Paul and Nancy at the time, and try to figure out how to move forward. And it was really, really hard. I'd like to relate a story from that time that I think really highlights the vision that Paul McCarthy had in helping move forward with this project. We spent a lot of time in meetings, obviously, trying to just figure out how to start moving forward. That was really one of the hardest things. And after another long day of negotiations, several of us retired to a local bar to continue our discussions in a more relaxed setting. And in fact, we spent a lot of time in bars around here because we didn't seem to be moving forward very well. There's a lot of other stories. We'll get to that another day if somebody has questions. But we had a good time, but we worked really, really hard, I'll say that. But the story I want to relay is Paul McCarthy he picked up a cocktail napkin, and he drew a circle in the middle of the napkin, and he laid it back down the table. And in fact, before he laid the napkin down, he held up the napkin and he said to us, he said, guys, it's really this simple, okay? It's not that complicated. He laid the napkin back down on the table, and he said, if the table is a map of the area, and this napkin is Village of Glenview, this circle is the Naval Air Station. He said, it is the heart of the village. It is the center of the Village of Glenview. If we can't control the heart, the village is going to die. And we have to work, we the village leadership have to control the heart of Glenview. If we don't work as partners with you on this, not just as some kind of a zoning authority as you sell the property off, he said, we won't make it. And I just, I thought about that statement many times over the years. And I really believe that, in a nutshell, is the essence of the spirit of community that Glenview has, and Paul's vision, if you will, on how to move forward as a partnership. Now, I believe that philosophy is one of the reasons we were so successful. We knew we had to work together to create something because there was nothing there. We had never been through this process before. And it was never easy, but we continued to push forward. I'd like to say we've spent a lot more time in bars after that trying to work through some of these issues, but we did. And I'd like to highlight just a couple of examples of things that I think came out of that partnership, and some of these have already been mentioned today. But I think when you hear these terms being mentioned, you have to go back to the mid-90s when we were working through this process and realize that they didn't exist before. They were created by this partnership and then later on turned into kind of now expected practices. The first one I want to mention is this real estate process we've heard several times already before, known as an economic development conveyance, where the Navy transferred land to the village, not for cash, which would have been the traditional approach, but for job creation to replace jobs lost at closure of the base. The second thing, again, as mentioned before here, is a dedicated full-time BRAC cleanup team comprised of village, state, EPA, and Navy members who met monthly to develop smart environmental solutions and expedited cleanup projects. And again, that whole concept of a dedicated team assigned to a particular project was something that really hadn't been done before. We had, at every base, I don't know from the Navy side, at every base we had a list of things we needed cleaning up, and when we got a little bit of money, we'd attack it, and then we'd mail some form off to somebody in the state or the region or whatever, and we kind of worked through it. And it took a very long time. But this concept of a dedicated team fully devoted to solving this problem was huge. And then, just as importantly, we prioritized cleanup to match the real estate transfers, I think were mentioned earlier, so that we could move faster into a redevelopment phase. And there were several other huge innovative processes that were developed here that really helped us move forward. And really, as a result of these processes, the next round of base closure, if you're not familiar with it, there were 4 or 5 rounds of base closure where property was disposed of and went through the whole process over and over again. When the 95 round came up, if you look at the congressional legislation for it, it is BRAC, the 1990 Base Closure Act as amended in 1995. And that amendment, in no small term, is dedicated to the people here to develop this process. Because a lot of these things that I just mentioned were included into that language to make it more focused on property transfers driven by the impacted communities, on job creation, and on environmental partnering. So that's really a credit to the village for this. And over the years, I've been involved in over 40 base closure actions. Some good, some not so good. And in fact, quite a few of the impacted communities are to this day still struggling, and I'm talking about 91 and 93 BRAC rounds, are still struggling mightily to redevelop their old base property. As I look around this beautiful setting, I'm still amazed at what was accomplished here. The success created here by the forward-thinking, very hard-working folks from the village, the state of Illinois, EPA, Office of Economic Adjustment, and the Navy team had a profound impact on the base closure and reuse process throughout the country, not just here. Congratulations to Glenview on what you've accomplished here, and to all of you who've had a hand in this wonderful success story. Thank you.
That was a pretty thorough explanation. I appreciate that. Mark Schultz was formerly Environmental Director of the Navy Region Midwest and Naval Facilities Engineering Command Midwest. Mark brought to the table a wealth of environmental remediation expertise that greatly assisted the BRAC cleanup team in expediting the cleanup and transfer of the property to the village. Mark?
Well, good afternoon. What a beautiful day. Glad to be here. I know I was a young guy back in 1993 when this started kicking off, and somehow I'm old and fat and all kinds of things. But I'm still working for the Navy, so that's the good thing about it. So we'll try to have some fun with this. Well, so Jimmy took care of the business aspect of the base transfer, and he did all the real estate actions. He did all the business planning, a lot of the budgeting, really all the important stuff, and gave us the resources on the environmental side in the Navy to do whatever we needed to do. So I really appreciate the way the new BRAC construct was. Really gave us those flexibilities, and really the environmental team that we worked with, as well as the reuse and real estate team. We really were pioneers at that point. We were really we saw this legislation in the works, and we're like, heck, let's go for it. Let's just what's the right thing. We sat together early with Gary Schaefer from US EPA, Charlene at Illinois EPA, myself kind of representing the local admiral here, the regional commander, Navy Region Midwest, and some folks from Southern Division Naval Facilities Engineering Command, Ralph Watkins, the BRAC environmental coordinator. And we kind of had an informal, some lunches and some gatherings early on. We pretty quickly came to a realization we all had the same common goal. We all wanted to clean up the property to the highest level that we possibly could, make this really a good deal for the community, and get the property back into the hands for redevelopment. So it definitely was an awesome process. One of the finest things I've done within the 34 years that I've been with the Navy. So appreciate all that starting. There's a little bit more on the history. I mean, Naval Air Station Glenview was really the hub of naval aviation back in World War II. You know, like, why did the Navy fly in the Midwest? Well, it was a little dangerous to have aircraft carriers off the coast, East Coast, West Coast. We had U-boats and submarines for the enemy looking for us. So we actually had 2 aircraft carriers in Lake Michigan, and we flew aircraft training out over the lake. And we had outlying landing fields, one out in Libertyville Training Site, which is now in Vernon Hills, which is another real successful property reuse that was turned over. It's all Vernon Hills Stadium football field and all ball fields, park districts. So a lot of good uses put to use up there. But then some amazing people came through here as naval aviators and as Navy people. We heard a few of those president names today, but also astronaut Neil Armstrong actually trained here. So had a great future there. Lieutenant Edward Butch O'Hare. So O'Hare Airfield was named. O'Hare Airport was named after him. So he was the Navy's first flying ace in World War II and a Medal of Honor recipient. So got his beginnings in flying back here. And then even a new one I noticed recently, a Rear Admiral Gallery. So he was a captain in World War II, and he actually led the task force that captured the U-505 boat, which is on display down in the Museum of Science and Industry. So if you think of it, we touched Libertyville, Glenview, we've touched downtown Chicago with Navy Pier and the Museum of Science and Industry. So kind of neat how those points of separation all pull back together. But really, how do we do the environmental stuff? I mean, there's a lot of boring technical stuff that, unless you're environmentalists like us, environmental engineers, professionals, that stuff gets a little dry. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. But it really came down to some hard work and some really, like we talked about, we had a very clear vision from the village. And that was the biggest thing that helped us. The village and Commander Don Owen on the reuse side, they really had a clear vision. Here's what we're going to do with the property. So that gave us, the environmental cleanup team, the tools to, all right, now we know exactly what we got to do to clean up the property. So that was a great first start. And secondly, probably the most important thing is we had some really, really strong professionals on the Illinois EPA side we talked about Charlene, and she's just amazing. And the Illinois EPA really kind of had to shoulder a lot of the work with the US EPA. We could hire as many contractors. We came up with some innovative ways to hire contractors to do studies and testing and contractors to do the actual remediation work, and we dumped all these reports on poor Charlene and Gary Schaefer, and of course we had 10 or 20 people reviewing them, but it was really just a few folks in each one of the agencies that had to read through all that stuff and make sure that they were looking after the interests of the citizens of Illinois. So it was a lot of hard work on Charlene and Gary's part, besides the work they did themselves, to bring in the specialists from their department. So go to toxicologists, water safety specialists, air permit folks, all people that are very busy doing their day-to-day job, to get them to drop everything they're doing to handle a quick review of a Navy document up here. So typically in the past, we would pass a document to a regulator, and they would have 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year to review those documents and get things back to us. That was kind of the normal way. Just the state and EPA were, they're tight on resources, and Navy was tight on resources. It took a very long time to get things back and forth. So we were so lucky with the commitment from Illinois EPA, the commitment from EPA to get those turnaround times down to, I think at some point we're doing like 2-week turnaround times on documents, and it was just amazing. And that's the only way we could get studies done and the cleanup actually done within 2 to 3 years after we started. It was an amazing process. But Gary Schaefer from the EPA, he came in with some very, very strong leadership early on. He was kind of like the godfather of the team. But he had been cutting his teeth on some other federal cleanups, and he came in and was like, we're going to get control of the military here. But the Navy, we had a softer approach. We had a very good, Ralph Watkins, our BRAC environmental coordinator, very mild-mannered environmental manager. Myself and our local team, our commitment from all the way up to our admiral, the regional commander, we're all like, let's work in partnership. Let's work as a team here. So we started that team atmosphere, and luckily we had already done some good things with the regulators before, so we built up a little bit of trust. But having the trust, the relationships, and the trust to try some things, we had to take some risk early on because the water quality standards weren't in place. We had the risk-based criteria that we talked about. That was all just coming to fruition, and we definitely pushed the edges of those areas. But IEPA also, the manager Clarence Smith was Charlene's boss at one point. He was again no gray area kind of a guy. He said, let's get together, let's get this done. Rah rah! I love the Navy, and he charged on. So Clarence set the tone as well at the IEPA, and same thing with the EPA leadership down in Region 5. All right, so I know there's a bunch of other people, Paul Lake and Brian Conrath on the Illinois EPA side. I don't want to leave them. Brian still serves us a lot to this day, and so does Charlene in different areas. All right, so I think we really were successful. We talked about, we had a clear vision. We had a shared commitment to do a rapid cleanup in the studies. We had top-notch professionals involved. We worked hand in hand. The village a few times. They had a great plan, but they did change priorities to us a few times, right, Charlene? So at some point they said, now we're working on this area. We're starting. This is number one priority. Got to get done by next month. A few times it was, all right, something changed. So now let's change gears. And we were flexible enough to deal with that and change direction pretty quick. And we were able to still meet the village's phasing requirements. We talked about using some innovative contracting methods. The first time we used some cost plus type, the clean contract and a rack for cleanup stuff. So we were able to try those out and hone those tools, and we use those a lot to this day in the future. So in the end, we really were able to work really well together. We drove some innovative solutions. We overcame a lot of bureaucratic barriers. And I think we delivered some exceptionally clean parcels here. Like you talked about, we cleaned everything up here to residential standards. I think one case we just couldn't get there on one site, but we worked a deal with the village to do a cooperative agreement where we provided the money to the village that we were going to do, and they chipped in a little bit to do that one parcel that for some reason we couldn't get there with our political side. But definitely the team did an amazing job, and the cleanup team delivered it. Said more than about 50% of the base within 2 years of starting the process. And just within a year after that, I think we're up to like 90%. So you saw a very, very rapid turnover. This Glen is obviously a beautiful place. We're really happy to see the Navy legacy still instilled here because of all the history, naval aviation from this area. And this reuse effort was definitely highly successful. And we were lucky to make some friends along the way, both the Illinois EPA and EPA. So it was really a good deal. So just in closing, a lot of times people would ask me, why did we go the extra mile at Glenview? And I said, well, it's something I used to tell my children when we go out camping. We camped a lot as a family growing up. And I always told them, let's leave this place a little bit cleaner than we found it. So I think we did. I think we all collectively, between the village and the reuse authorities, the Restoration Advisory Board, the voice of the community, as well as Illinois EPA and EPA, came together and really made something beautiful here. So thank you for this recognition. Appreciate it.
How appropriate. We have the fire trucks driving by, and we're going to talk about our fire chief. As a lifelong Glenview resident and former village fire chief, Joe Roberson was a natural to co-chair the Glenview Restoration Advisory Board. Joe was very passionate about ensuring the cleanup process was done properly. His leadership of the community-based RAB was essential and resulted in high confidence that the property was cleaned to the highest standard. Joe? Welcome. Did you figure that out, that you'd get some sirens to go by to greet you?
Thank you. I had absolutely nothing to do with that. I will admit, though, when we were having budget meetings with the village board, we would occasionally have those go by. But today, I had absolutely nothing to do with it. As a lifelong resident of Glenview and as one of Glenview's former fire chiefs, I can unequivocally state that the redevelopment of the former Glenview Naval Air Station was done with the utmost professionalism and commitment to the task at hand. Every single person I met during this 20-plus year project came to the table with impressive expertise and a laser focus on getting the job done. There was a spirit of teamwork which held fast throughout the project. Our compass was set with these wise words from our former village manager, Paul McCarthy, who in his own inimitable fashion stated, "For this project, visualize that we are all in a rowboat on very rough seas. If anyone pokes a hole in this boat, we all drown." That was the attitude from day one, and it still exists today as we work our way to December 2022, when the final bonds will be paid off and the project will officially close. For my part, I volunteered to be co-chair of the Restoration Advisory Board, which was formed in early 1994. The RAB consisted of my Navy counterpart, Ralph Watkins, and a number of Glenview residents, many of them with environmental and safety backgrounds. Our mission was to meet periodically with the BRAC cleanup team, review and provide feedback to their environmental cleanup documents, and act as a conduit for information to and from the community. There are members of the RAB in attendance here today, and I'm especially glad to see as well the last commanding officer, Captain Jim Schultz, who was a guiding light and the spark plug for our efforts on the RAB and provided amazing leadership. I would like to ask that all of you that are here today, could you please stand for a moment and let everyone recognize you for the significant contribution of time and talent on behalf of the Village of Glenview. From my vantage point, the process worked exactly as advertised. The Navy, the U.S. EPA, and the Illinois EPA shared all of their planning and remediation information with us, welcomed our comments and concerns, gave our community very high confidence that the cleanup process was going to be done thoroughly and correctly. Thank you to the Navy for inviting us to participate in a process which ultimately delivered to the village nearly 1,100 acres of former Navy land cleaned to the highest residential standards. On a personal note, I have to tell you that this place holds a special meaning to me because, like Director Kim, my dad used to bring me to the fence to watch the planes taking off and landing as a boy, and that was due to the fact that he trained here and went through here on his way to the Pacific during World War II. So this place will always hold a special place in my heart. And for that reason and for the reasons I've just shared with you, I'm proud to have served with you, Glenview, and for you. And I thank you for the honor and privilege of being here today. Thank you very much.
And now it's time for the EPA presentation. Kathy? Who's coming?
I think, isn't Greg coming? Yeah.
Greg?
Greg? Did you see my panic face there?
No panic, no worries.
Okay. Here, Greg, switch spots with me so you can talk.
Okay.
All right, now we're to the really fun part. This is where we get to recognize the organizations that pulled together and made this happen, which is just such an amazing thing. So as a little bit of housekeeping, as I call up your organization, will you please come up and accept a certificate from Kathy, as well as a quick photograph, and then we'll convene behind here, and once we've gone through, we'll take a photograph together, and I think our MC will take back over from there and give us our parting words and shuttle us over to the next piece of this today. The other thing is, if we think we accounted for, and it really is over 40 organizations, so you're going to get to hear my voice for a few minutes here, but we think we have 7 of the organizations represented here today, and so we'll announce those 7, and then as those representatives are starting to gather behind the podium, I'll go ahead and announce the others. We do want to recognize the other organizations publicly today as well, and then we'll go from there. If that sounds good, let's continue to enjoy this nice weather. So to start with, and in this instance, I'll ask Kathy to also present the award plaque to the Village of Glenview.
Yes! Great turn. Oh, yeah, I'm going to come on this side. See, we just go.
Can we take this as well?
Sure. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Lovely, right? You get a certificate and a plaque?
I guess.
Looking good, right? 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1.
Illinois Environmental Protection Agency.
Finally, we talk about you the whole time.
Over here, please.
Oh no, they're getting away. Okay.
Your name was mentioned so often today. Congratulations, right?
All right, here we go, guys. Right here. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. And congratulations.
U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. No, we've got it covered. Rosita's going to be accepting on our behalf.
covering for Gary Schaefer, who led by Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you, ladies. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Naval Facilities Engineering Command.
You're down. 3, 2, 1. Over 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Glenview Restoration Advisory Board.
Great day. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
Glenview Park District.
All right, right here, guys. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
Glenview Chamber of Commerce.
Right here. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
So this is where I get to earn my money and pronounce the names of all these other organizations, and hopefully I'll get it right. And I apologize in advance if I have not. And if you are a representative of that organization, I apologize for not catching you here. We certainly want to recognize you, and we have a certificate for you. We do have certificates for, and we'll work on providing those to those organizations. So I'll go ahead and read through the rest of those, and then those that we called that are here, we'll take a picture in the back immediately after. I'm getting the high sign, so we got that right. Okay. So in addition to the 7 we just called out, I'd also like to recognize NSAFE Allen and Hoschel, the U.S. Department of Defense, the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Naval Air Reserve Force, Coast Guard Air Facility Glenview, Glenview Post Office Relocation Determination, U.S. Department of the Interior, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Illinois Department of Conservation, Office of Economic Adjustment, National Association of Installation Developers, State of Illinois Legislature, Economic Development Administration, Illinois Department of Transportation, Cook County Department of Transportation, Regional Transportation Authority, Metra, Northeastern Illinois Planning Commission, Glenview Public Library, School District Number 30, and School District Number 34, and School District Number 225, Northfield Township, Camaros Limited, and Cambridge Systematics, T.Y. Lynn International, Bass Corp Inc., The Shaw Company, Tracy Ross and Associates, Rodriguez and Associates, Economic Research Associates, Messero Stein Real Estate, a division of Messero Financial, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill LLP, Montgomery Watson Harza, Kutak Rock, Robbins, Salmon and Pat Limited, URS Woodward Clyde, RV Noreen and Associates, and Chapman and Cutler. Please join me in a round of applause for all the very worthy recipients of this award.